because I know one of the things I've learned with lawyers is typically once you get certified with, once you take the bar, for example, in California, you can only practice law in California,
Yeah.
unless you go to DC, of course, and where it's a little bit easier to I guess pass that bar or become certified within DC. But I guess with the federal certification for patent law, gives you some wiggle, significantly more wiggle room to basically work wherever you want.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's totally unique, but it's fairly rare. There's not many fields that really allow that kind of flexibility. If you're inside the military and
Right.
performing law, then you typically can perform anywhere. If you're working as a federal prosecutor, you can kind of work anywhere on a federal license. But there's not very many of those that
Right.
exist. Patent law is interesting in sort of its history, going back to basically when the Venetians invented the concept in the 15th century. It's always been a sort of an interesting field of law. It started off basically with non-lawyers. It started off with the technology people, because the technology aspects are more important than the law, because you have to understand the technology principally. And so it's also I think it might be a unique field of law, because it's a field of law that you don't need a law degree to practice in. You do need a technology degree, but you don't need a law degree. So you can get a law, like you can get a license to practice in patent law without a law degree. So it's unique in that respect as well.
Oh, wow, interesting. Okay. Oh, so you do need the computer science degree in order to be a patent lawyer, is what you're
Yeah, you
saying?
need some sort of technological undergrad. So engineering, chemistry, computer science, stuff that provides practical technological utility. So it's not even all sciences necessarily. It's one that would have practical utility in the real world. So manufacturing and invention of new things.
Interesting. Okay, so but there's no, and because that's what's really interesting with like what I've learned with lawyers is that you don't necessarily, and I'm not sure how this applies to like patent law, like what you're describing, but I know, for example, like you don't necessarily need to go to law school in order to become a lawyer ultimately at the end of the day.
There are a couple exceptions, but primarily you do. And
Yeah.
especially if you want to have any ability to transfer your license, if you do the other routes, you're going to be really stuck.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah. And then what's as far as like what you've learned, like at least easing into this type of career with being in the patent law, like what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned along the way, going from graduate school to actually practicing patent law?
I don't know. The field is much more technological than legal in a lot of respects. It's the law is less volatile or um, less a factor than the technological elements. So in patent law, you're trying to figure out whether or not an invention is new. So just to put, to make it easier for people maybe to imagine, you can imagine any kind of technology you want, like maybe a microphone in front of you, right?
Right.
So there are different, or the camera we're doing on. So there's different ways to do a camera. There's different technological methods,
Right.
and those can be fairly big or fairly small. It can be a new way of designing a lens out of new materials. It can be a new way of securing the lens to the body of the thing. It can be a new way of the switches being designed, or the software interfaces or the algorithms. So, or for a microphone, it can be the different kinds of hardware or different kinds of materials. So basically anything that provides a technological development. So it can be fairly small components. Another way of thinking about it is if you're thinking like a car engine and what you're looking at, it could be anything from the car engine itself to fairly minor components, like the nature of the valve or how it's constructed, or the nature of an ignition coil or a ejector, or how these things are designed, or how to inject fuel in the middle of a compression cycle or in the middle of a piston, which was a design challenge for a long time. I think they didn't crack that one until relatively recently, of figuring out how to put fuel in between two pistons that are coming at each other and put it in the middle. To figure that out. That was, I think, done finally by Subaru or Honda, something like that, a couple years back.
Right.
But all kinds of technological discoveries, which may or may not be ultimately better than what exists. But then again, you don't know when you're starting.